Hello and welcome to More Maximum Slipknot, the second talking book about the band. It was written and researched by Ben Graham, music is by Amanda Thompson and it's read by Sian Jones. You can check out our full catalogue on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk.
I understand what this whole thing is about. You know what I mean? I understand that there is a business end to this situation, that there is an importance in the world for a lot of people for Slipknot. I know what it takes to be on tour. I know how many pairs of underwear to take. You know, so it's kind of like I don't have to go through all those trials and tribulations that I went through when I first went on the road. And because Slipknot's not an easy band to be in. Every photo shoot is a mask and hours of pain.
There is no question about it. Slipknot are the most outrageous hard rock band on the planet today. With 3 drummers, 2 ferocious guitarists, bass, vocals, a DJ and a sampler, they're already equipped to create noise and mayhem on a scale unprecedented in heavy metal music. But when all 9 members only ever appear in public clad in the sickest of fetish masks, plus industrial boiler suits, and when their reputation for lyrical brutality and extreme behaviour begins where all other controversial rock bands leave off, then you have every parent and insecure authority figure's nightmare and every messed up, rebellious, metal-loving kid's dream. Over the most intense, pummeling blitzkrieg of down-tuned noise imaginable, Slipknot sing songs of innermost pain and loneliness, of real-life horror, sickness and cruelty, unintelligible to all but the initiated, yet tangible in their power and claustrophobic gravity to anyone. Yet, at the same time, Slipknot are a celebration of survival, of fighting back and rising above the pain and alienation. Their live shows are a release for both band and audience, a ritual breaking of taboos, a purification of the mind, body and soul, a rejection of all the hypocritical rules and regulations of society. In this sense, the band's onstage acts of vomiting and defecation are symbolic of the purging nature of their music. Likewise, they wear their masks not to hide, but to show their true selves behind the more subtle and insidious masks that we are all of us forced to wear every day, just to get by. Slipknot have touched a dark chord with a whole generation of angst-ridden teenagers, just as they have with anyone who remembers what it was really like to be young. All 9 members of Slipknot were your typical bored, frustrated, suburban metal kids, with a shared upbringing in the unremarkable Midwestern nowhere town of Des Moines, Iowa. Despite, or perhaps because of, its small size, its general conformity and petty-mindedness, and its lack of interesting diversions for the young and restless, Des Moines seemed to have quite a thriving local band scene in the early 90s. And it was a way out of this shifting mass of constantly imploding and reforming rock and metal groups, all of whom knew each other and played at and attended each other's shows, that Slipknot eventually emerged. Founder member Sean Clown Crane's original vision was of an extreme punk metal hardcore band based around the backline of 3 drummers, with an all-out confrontational and theatrical stage show. From within the incestuous Des Moines metal scene, he soon recruited singer Anders Colsafini, bassist Paul Gray, drummer Joey Jordison, and guitarist Josh Brainard and Donnie Steele. With this lineup, Slipknot started officially in September 1995 and released their debut album the following year. The 8-song record, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, was essentially an expensive demo, with the band pressing and distributing 1,000 copies themselves. Sounding more diverse and less focused than the band would later become, the album incorporated funk, jazz, disco and hip-hop influences alongside heavy rock, while Anders' deep-throated, grunting vocals were in the classic death metal tradition. This lineup didn't last long, however, and the Slipknot we now know and love, or hate, began to take shape during 1997. First of all, Donnie Steele embraced Christianity and left the band to be replaced by guitarist Mick Thompson. And Anders Colsafini was replaced on vocals by the apparently more radio-friendly tones of Corey Taylor. The band also added Craig Jones on samples, DJ Sid Wilson and a second percussionist in the form of band tattooist Greg Welts, aka Cuddles. The notoriously unreliable Cuddles was himself replaced in 1998 by Chris Fenn, by which time Slipknot had signed a 7-album deal with the home of quality modern heavy metal music, Roadrunner Records. The band's major label debut, the eponymously titled Slipknot, was released in June 1999. Producer Ross Robinson, then best known for his groundbreaking work on the first 2 Korn albums, honed the group's unique percussive wall of sound into the aural equivalent of the Blair Witch Project. It was a genuinely visceral and disturbing reinvention of an old form, bringing real power and terror to a genre that had been coasting for too long on hollow clichés and empty rhetoric. Driven by a tribal barrage of drums and bowel-rattling bass overlaid with dense, scything guitars, DJ scratching and horror movie samples, songs like Wait and Bleed, Spit It Out and Eyeless quickly became nihilistic anthems to a new generation of extreme music fans. Ah yes, the fans, known affectionately as maggots. Slipknot fans are an intense and emotional bunch. Overwhelmingly young teenagers, they attend concerts in their own homemade masks and costumes, inspired by the band but designed to reflect their own personalities and tastes. A Slipknot show is never a passive experience, with the audience watching the band go through the motions on stage. Instead, it's a two-way interaction, a chaotic, cathartic celebration in which the fans are often more extreme and insane in their behaviour than the group themselves. With band members hurling themselves into the mosh pit, the connection is real and physical, and the reciprocal energy drives the Slipknot members to push themselves as far as they can go. Vomiting, defecating, bleeding, breaking bones and smashing up their environment, Slipknot force themselves to the very limit in the live arena. From their first nationwide exposure on the 1999 Ozfest tour, Slipknot hit the road with a vengeance. By this point, Josh Brainard, who had played on the Slipknot album, had been replaced on guitar by Jim Root. He completed the lineup that headlined 2000's Tattoo the Earth touring festival, alongside the likes of Slayer, Spineshank, Sepultura and Downset, plus one-off guests including Metallica and Stone Temple Pilots. The band caused more outrage when they came to Europe for the very first time, seemingly arriving on a tidal wave of controversy, hype and media scare stories. But if anything, Slipknot's overseas fans were even more committed than their audience back home. At the turn of the century then, Slipknot seemed to be poised for world domination, so much so that the hysterically religious-minded might even consider them to be the much prophesied Antichrist incarnate. Yet the band insisted that they were only just beginning. Everything they'd done so far was only foreplay. The real sickness was still to come.
Slipknot is kind of based around chaos, and that's how it is. I mean, not just the music, but touring and just the whole vibe of being in Slipknot is like that.
With a host of awards under their belts, a string of magazine covers to their name and sales for their debut album reaching platinum status, Slipknot in 2001 were one of the great success stories of the decade so far. They were also one of its greatest scapegoats, held up as both cause and symptom of the moral decay of society, responsible for everything from gun crime to sexual promiscuity, drug use, devil worshipping and general disrespect for one's elders and betters. All this was nonsense, of course. Slipknot were just a group of 9 extremely fine musicians, albeit ones who seemed to leave a trail of chaos, carnage and destruction in their wake. But any harm Slipknot members have caused has almost always been to themselves, and despite media hearsay, copycat incidents are few and far between. Similarly, any message in their lyrics has always been personal rather than political, and their stand in interviews has always been to just think for yourselves and respect others. Yet somehow our 9 masked men just couldn't help attracting controversy, all of which turned out to be excellent publicity and more grist to their artistic mill. Slipknot's first album had kicked open the doors and got them the attention of the world. Now everyone wanted to see if they could live up to the hype. Were they one-trick ponies who had shot their creative load in that first ferocious blast? Or could they not only repeat the trick but go further, develop their sound and their style, add depth and expand their audience without self-destructing or selling out? Slipknot had promised their fans that they wouldn't cheese out like almost every other heavy band had done. They insisted that their second album would be heavier, darker, faster and harder. They certainly had a lot to live up to, but they were determined not to let anybody down. After nearly 2 years of solid touring, Slipknot were exhausted, beaten, cynical and sick to death of everything and each other. The perfect state in which to begin crafting a new LP. They spent 2 months solidly writing and allowing their energy levels to build back up again, before going into Sound City Studios in California with producer Ross Robinson once more behind the desk, and letting rip. As a result, the album came together as a piece, as a coherent expression of where the band's heads were at the time of recording. A very dark and destructive place indeed. Yet the band members were convinced that they'd made the album of their lives. I love it because it represents us just doing our thing, Corey told Hit Parader magazine in September 2001. Comparing their debut to a huge tantrum with all kinds of unfocused, directionless energy just pouring out, he claimed that on the new record everything was honed to a diamond-cutting beam, slicing through the rhetoric and getting to the heart of the problem in a split second. Their targets now were all the people who had tried to take advantage of them since their success, and the things they felt were killing the reasons why people made music. Sean Clown Cran backed him up in a later interview, saying that the new album was a lot more intense and focused than its predecessor. The first album went in many different directions at once, but didn't follow any one road to the very extreme. On the second album, they had taken things to the limit and beyond. The title of Slipknot's second album, released in June 2001, was Iowa. Why, everyone wondered, had they named it after their home state, the place they'd been trying to escape from since they hit puberty, but which now, with the world at their feet, they had chosen to return to. For precisely those reasons, it turned out. Slipknot had stayed based in Des Moines, Iowa, in order to try to be a positive force in the neighbourhood they grew up in, to try to help a new generation of kids and actually make things different instead of just running away and leaving everyone else behind. And Iowa, after all, was the source of all the band's anger, and thus their energy. It was their wellspring, their creative lodestone. This was where the formative experiences had happened that made them the people they were. This was what they had to deal with, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. Iowa was where they kept on coming back to. If I were to transplant myself to anywhere else, I think I would turn into a completely different person, Corey said, and I don't know if I'd be down with that. Returning to Iowa helped the band tap into their pain and emotional darkness, but it also made them realise the positive virtues that growing up in such a bleak landscape had given them, such as self-sufficiency and self-awareness. Corey claimed that everyone under the age of 35 in Iowa at least had a completely developed personality, whereas people from Los Angeles or New York were surrounded by so much eye candy and so many distractions and things to do that they became numb to everything. Even poor people, Corey said, they float through and they do the things they're supposed to do, and they say the things they're supposed to say. They become unattached to life. The recording of the album's title track was a particularly spiritual moment for the band, as they laid it down in one take, all crammed in together in one tiny room complete with Ross Robinson and engineer Mike Fraser. The closeness and discomfort was exactly what Slipknot thrived on, and with the lights turned out, the band conjured the track from nothing in one go. It went to the heart of what Slipknot and the album was all about, doing away with all the dishonesty and commercialism and reaching deep inside for that true primal howl. This is who we are, Slipknot was saying, and maybe we're more like you than you'd care to admit.
We're definitely not reinventing the wheel or doing anything that hasn't been done before, but I think we're just kind of maybe taking rock or metal kind of back a few steps, because I think it kind of started evolving a little too quickly, and all of a sudden you've got metal bands who aren't even metal bands, they're more like hip hop bands, which to me is kind of ridiculous, but whatever, it is what it is.
Iowa, the album, opens with the 59 seconds of gibbering screams and down-tuned noise that is 515, before racing into People Equal Shit on a tsunami of pummeling drums and raging guitars. This ultimate outsider anthem took its title from one of the band's most popular catchphrases, with Corey singing from the point of view of being so beat down he's got nothing to lose. He's past caring, nothing matters anymore, and as a result, he's liberated. Nothing you do can hurt him because he's nothing, but he knows that you are nothing too. Accelerated scratching drives a juddering guitar riff like a wounded bull lashing out in the midst of a Mexican day of the dead Mardi Gras. The distorted wah-wah-riven disaster piece pounds dementedly into third place on the album, a meditation on disease and powerlessness, and how we are all alone at the end. People make noises when they're sick, nothing to do except hold on to nothing. In a tense eye of calm at the centre of the storm, Corey ruminates on death in life and life in death, concluding, "I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not supposed to be." The crazed, clown-like rhythms of My Plague give way to a ghostly yet soaring chorus buried beneath hammering metallic percussion. Needle-sharp guitars slice in and out of the dense mesh as if administering death by 1,000 cuts. Dominated by layers of rhythm, the song addresses those who blame others without looking at themselves. "I'm just a bastard, but at least I admit it," Corey sings, while recognising that all criticism is self-criticism, and that people lash out when they feel threatened or insecure. Some at others, some at themselves. Slipknot seem to be accepting their fate as the eternal scapegoats, but typically they see this as a source of empowerment. With its descending helter-skelter choruses and its churning half-rapped verses, the end of everything is catchy, comical, "I think I'm going to be sick and it's your fault," and cathartic all at once. Following an echoing, disembodied countdown, the Heretic anthem erupts into a maelstrom of jackhammer drums and self-referential wordplay that, lyrically at least, almost amounts to the Ballad of Slipknot. Here, Corey seems to be relating the band's own story, their trials and tribulations from its opening line, "I'm a pop star threat and I'm not dead yet," to his insistence that all the money in the world can't buy me. On top of all this, the chorus of "If you're 555 then I'm 666" is surely destined to be shouted back at them by mass audiences for years to come, despite being nothing more sinister than a claim that the band are on a higher level than their detractors. The slow building Gently starts off as almost true to its title, but finishes up as anything but. Corey muses on pleasurable escapism, on whatever allows you to turn off your mind and relieve the pressure for a while, before concluding, "Too bad I must always leave it, but that's life." Left Behind, meanwhile, is the closest that Slipknot have come yet to a conventional radio-friendly nu metal track, with its nasal sing-along chorus and dub-like dropout for the middle eight. Not that lyrics like "I can't stand to see your thalidomide robot face" are exactly guaranteed to charm AM radio programmers. After its accelerating trip hammer opening, the shape is all brooding tension and nervy squiggles, with another lyric about feeling trapped and powerless, unable to act even to save one's own life. Lost, broken and thrown away, the alienation is complete, the desolation profound. The protagonist knows exactly what's wrong with him, and it doesn't help him a bit. With a low in the mixed, distorted spoken word vocal over pulverising guitar and drums, I Am Hated fuses the experimental and the visceral sides of the band to powerful effect. Its mere 2.5-minute duration contains a landslide of lyrical bile and pure punk invective. As the Knot lay out their mission plan to overthrow all your icons of cool, nothing more than slick salesmen for the capitalist consumerist conspiracy. I'm fat and I'm ugly and proud, Corey rasps. We all got conned. He's demolishing the rock and roll myth from within in order to liberate us from all the mediocre sacred cows we spawned. The spiralling cinematic chaos of Skin Ticket heralds a nightmare vision of people and cancer conspiring together, and where everything just adds up to zero. Come see my cage, built-in migraine, Corey hisses over a dark, textured soundscape of tolling bells and mournful effects, before it all inevitably explodes. New Abortion finds Slipknot coming on like hepatitis and drawing on metaphors of disease and infection once more while asking who is really in control. Metabolic appears to be a tale of obsessive love, taken to the point where the lover needs to become the loved one in order to survive. The album ends with the incredible 15-minute long title track, all the more astonishing for being recorded in one take. The song gradually builds up a slow tribal groove like a Native American ghost dance. A repeated hypnotic bass line over clanking percussion and unsettling sound effects erupt after 3 minutes into grinding squalls of down-tuned guitars. Corey half sings, half speaks his lyrics from the perspective of an obsessive lover or murderer addressing his victim, while other band members can be heard laughing mirthlessly in the background. You belong to me, I will kill you to love you, he chants, as somewhere that sounds like a chainsaw splutters into life. Someone is speaking in tongues and someone else is breaking down in sobs of pain. Eventually, the song itself seems to be torn limb from limb, pulling apart blindly in all directions. Just as in the Blair Witch Project, the horror is all the more vivid for never being made explicit, so you know that something terrible is happening in Iowa, but you can't quite work out exactly what it is for all the darkness and confusion. It is a chilling climax to a powerful album. Slipknot achieved all they aimed for on Iowa and more, marking the pinnacle of their career to date. It's an album that not only revisits the agonies of growing up, and isn't all life a process of either of growing or dying, but that also addresses the music business itself and the fake dreams it fosters to its own unscrupulous ends. The only other contemporary artist of a similar stature to Slipknot to address such issues so savagely is Eminem, and it can be no coincidence that the two acts frequently find themselves competing for the dubious honour of public enemy number one. With Iowa, Slipknot certainly raised their game. Their target now was nothing less than the very mythology that sustained them.
We needed the time off because we had a lot of bad business stuff going on behind, with Slipknot, with our people that we hire, like management and shit like that. And basically, and that caused a lot of problems. That caused problems with band members and everything. It caused a lot of problems. And so we had to work a lot of shit out. So we needed time away from each other to kind of let all this shit work, like get rid of a bunch of people and do all this stuff, and then the band got back together and we talked about what our problems were with everything, and then we're fucking, ready to rock.
With Iowa in the can, it was time to start heading out on the road again to promote it. It was a task that Slipknot looked forward to with mixed feelings. The 2 years of touring around their debut album had left them with broken bones and physical and emotional scars. It had left them drained, battered and exhausted. No sooner had they come home than they had gone straight into the intensive writing process for Iowa, and after that had been straight into the studio to record it. Then, seemingly without a break, it was back on the bus for a headlining slot on the 2001 Ozzfest tour. Ozzfest took place before the release of the new album and found the band playing only 4 songs from Iowa in their set, although this was increased to 6 on their own off-fest dates. By the time the package tour was completed, however, the album was in the shops and Slipknot were out on their own headlining world tour to promote it. But as they transported their ever more spectacular and outrageous live set from theatre to arena to festival stage around the globe, the pressure and the stress were beginning to take their toll on the 9 musicians at the centre of it all. The problems were the same ones that had plagued them during the making and promotion of their debut, and which had fuelled so much of the anger, energy and darkness on Iowa itself. But if anything, the difficulties on the subsequent tour were even worse. Much of the specifics are still vague, many for legal reasons. But it seems like the fakers, the bullshitters and the liars were still around the band, as intent as ever on tearing them apart. "We met a lot of people that seemed cool and then took advantage of us," Corey said in the round of press interviews to promote Iowa. These were the people that the album was supposed to be a brutal rejection of, but it seems that those people were still around, wielding their unhealthy influence, whispering into the ear of each band member in turn. The people who were working for us stopped caring about the band and started caring about money, Corey later added, looking back with the benefit of hindsight. The result was that the band came within a hair's breadth of ripping off their masks for good and calling it a day. It's not surprising that such pressures should exist, even within a group as idealistic, disciplined and righteous as Slipknot. By the time of Iowa, these eternal misfits had become serious moneymakers, and every rat in the business could smell the green stuff and wanted a part of them. Success is the devil, and inevitably Slipknot were being sucked into the heart of the very corruption they had always despised. The band had always said that they wanted to be big, that they wanted to reach out to ordinary kids all over the world, not just the cool, in-the-know ones who had privileged access to small unknown bands. But to do that, they had to make use of and become part of the music industry machine. Like many before them, they claimed that they would use the system rather than let it use them, and that they would subvert it from within. Yet such noble goals are far easier to set out than to actually achieve, even with the best will in the world. It isn't so much a case of selling out as to who is buying in without the band even realising what's going on. Slipknot have always claimed on record and in interviews that they would never give up, that they weren't afraid of anything, that they couldn't be bought and had nothing to lose. But by the end of 2001, Slipknot were beaten and were ready to self-destruct rather than compromise the shared vision they had started out with. Quite apart from the outside pressures, here were 9 very extreme individuals spending nearly every waking hour in close confines together and pushing each other to their physical and emotional limits every night on stage. For the last 3 years, life in Slipknot had resembled nothing so much as a touring, self-inflicted torture camp, with nightly beatings, sensory deprivation, and the constant reliving of personal emotional torment, all in the name of art. It's testament to the strengths of those concerned that Slipknot didn't break up or worse within 6 months, let alone 3 years. By their own admission, Slipknot came off the Iowa tour unable to even look one another in the eye. "I'm dying, this is killing us," Sean Cram told Kerrang! Magazine at the time. None of the band members were talking to each other and were in no hurry to reopen communications. The brotherhood that was so strong had been torn apart. It was truly Slipknot's darkest hour.
the live show. It's the most pure thing that there is for me. I mean, it's just great music, and I can do whatever the hell I want, and I don't have to answer to anybody, and I have thousands of fans that enjoy it just as much, and I get that feedback instantly, you know?
Corey Taylor had first formed Stone Sour in 1992. Named after a potentially lethal cocktail of whiskey, orange juice and sour mix, it represented his initial attempt to kick against the tedium, frustration and conformity of his Des Moines upbringing. Fusing power, melodic hard rock with angry, intelligent lyrics, the initial lineup also included drummer Joel Ekman and bassist Sean Economaki. After a string of guitarists came and went, Jim Root joined in 1995 and remained with the band until Corey was co-opted into Slipknot in 1997, at which point Stone Sour Mark I folded. Stone Sour had actually come a close second to Slipknot in an Iowa Battle of the Bands competition in 1996, which had provided the latter band with their first big break. Root would join Slipknot himself in 1999, while Sean Economaki went on to become the band's stage manager. So the story would doubtless have ended had not yet another old friend and musical collaborator of Taylor's, Josh Rand, who had briefly played guitar in Stone Sour before Jim joined, approached him in 2000 with a bunch of songs he'd been working on. On the basis of these, Taylor and Rand began an intensive songwriting partnership that allowed Taylor to express a different side to his creativity than the particular discipline of Slipknot allowed. 18 months later, they had an album's worth of songs that they desperately wanted to record. It so happened that this point coincided with Slipknot's coming off the Iowa tour at their lowest ebb since they'd formed. A break was definitely needed, and so Corey decided to use the time and space to work on he and Rand's side project, and at the same time use this creative sideline as a therapeutic way of overcoming the traumatic experience that Slipknot had become. The initial lineup of the new band, originally known as Project X, was Josh, Corey, Sean Economaki and drummer Danny Spain, then playing in Down the Sun, but previously a member of Des Moines' band Atomic Opera, which featured both Jim Root and his predecessor in Slipknot, Josh Brainard, and Body Pit alongside original Slipknot members Anders Colsafini, Donnie Steele and Paul Gray, plus current Slipknot guitarist Mick Thompson. Spain had also been a member of Dead Front, the band that Jim Root and Sean Economaki had formed in 1997 after the original Stone Sour had split. Project X was renamed Super Ego, and the band recorded a 2001 demo entitled Click Here to Exit before making their live debut on the 7th of December in that year at Des Moines rock venue The House of Bricks. By this time, Danny Spain had left due to other commitments, so the band called in Joel Ekman to replace him and added Jim Root on second guitar 4 days before the show. After the concert, however, they discovered that another band already existed with the name of Super Ego. They changed their name to Closure, but on discovering that that name too was already taken, they looked around for an identity that they could call their own. The answer was obvious: Stone Sour. After all, that was who they were, with every member of the current lineup having played with the original band at some point or another. And the new material they had written was so much a continuation of the same spirit and style as Stone Sour Mark I that it seemed only right to revive the original band name. The only difference this time around is that we lost the fear of trying to compete with what is popular, Corey said. We are going to stay true to one type of music that we want to make, and no matter who likes it or not, I am still secure that we have produced a great album. The group's self-titled debut LP was released in 2002. More introspective and intimate than Slipknot, though still comparable to the latter group's more tuneful moments, Stone Sour specialised in soulful and melodic hard rock with a twist. Though Taylor's vocals made comparisons with Slipknot at times inevitable, it was a novelty to hear him really singing rather than screaming. The band that Stone Sour most closely resembled was Alice in Chains, although many evoked thrash titans Pantera too, particularly in describing Corey's vocal style. From the all-out rockers Get Inside, Tumult and Orchids to the slower, more moody likes of Blue Study, the album explored areas that Slipknot could never reach. Most people's first exposure to the group came through the use of the record's one atypical power ballad, Bother, on the soundtrack to the Spider-Man movie. But those who bought the album were impressed with the more experimental likes of Monolith and Inhale, and particularly the strange, poetic closing track, Omega. If nothing else, Stone Sour proved that Corey Taylor was a more versatile writer and performer than many gave him credit for, and the band appealed to a far wider audience than Slipknot did, even if they could never inspire the same kind of devoted hardcore following. But such comparisons are unfair. Stone Sour are a great traditional hard rock band in their own right, a completely different creature from Slipknot, but surely one that any maggot could find a little room in his heart for.
Since I'm above an average height, most of the people I meet, like most of them have only seen pictures of me, So I get a lot of, fuck, you're huge, or, oh, you're big, and I'm like, no, shut up, whatever. Yeah, I'm tall, leave me alone,
Joey Jordison had always been a reject. The Slipknot drummer had formed the band as a teenager in Des Moines in the mid-90s, and the group had played irregularly with various lineups since then. In 1997, for example, they apparently consisted of a singer called Dizzy, a bassist called Tony Anonymous, a drummer called Strange, and Joey on guitar rejoicing under the pseudonym of Mr. Pathetic. Sleazy glam punk metal of the highest or lowest order, song titles included Makes Me Hate and Mummy's in Rehab, while their image was succinctly described as dead junkie hookers. But by 1999, although they had never abandoned the idea of the Rejects, Joey found himself the only remaining member of the band. The project was reactivated, though, when Jordison met guitarist Trip Eisen, then playing in Slipknot support band Dope. Eisen would go on to greater success with his new band Static X, but he never forgot his commitment to Jordison's Rejects project, and it wasn't long before he suggested a young musician who he thought would make a perfect bass player. It turned out that they both got more than they bargained for. Wednesday 13 was then the leader of his own shock goth glamour-billy garage band, the Frankenstein Drag Queens from Planet 13. A horror movie junkie addicted to late-night drive-in B-movie fodder like Plan 9 from Outer Space and Invaders from Mars, as well as 80s slasher flicks like Friday the 13th and Halloween. Wednesday was also a fan of all kinds of trashy music, ranging from the Cramps and the New York Dolls to Twisted Sister and Hanoi Rocks, taking in Alice Cooper and notorious transvestite punk rocker Jane County along the way. He judged rock bands purely by whether they looked cool or not, by which he meant as outrageous and absurd as possible. Stars should be larger than life, shows should be dramatic and theatrical, parents and squares should be shocked and alienated. Wednesday's dark trash aesthetic would soon become the driving force of the rejuvenated Rejects, renamed, once Wednesday had promoted himself to singer and chief songwriter, as Murder Dolls. With Eric Griffin on bass and Ben Graves on drums, Murder Dolls went into SR Audio Studios in Des Moines in April 2002 to record their debut LP. Prior to this date, Jordison hadn't even met Wednesday 13, and the band had only ever played live 4 times with both Jordison and Eisen on guitars. Nevertheless, such was their shared attitude, and it has to be said the punk trash simplicity of the songs, that the band gelled right away. For Jordison, Murder Dolls were the perfect antidote to the depressive, claustrophobic atmosphere of Slipknot and so many other contemporary metal bands, and he hoped that the kids would see them the same way. There was no point in doing anything remotely similar to Slipknot, he reasoned. In Murder Dolls, he didn't play drums, didn't wear a mask, and the music was a breath of fresh air, because it was completely different and fun. Murder Dolls may not have worn masks, but they certainly had a strong visual image. Somewhere between extreme goth, 80s glam and zombie mental patients escaped from the Arkham Asylum, Murder Dolls looked like they were having the time of their lives. It's not hard to see the band as Jordison's escape valve from the nightmare of Slipknot's Iowa tour, although Murder Dolls were of course the result of 5 very imaginative and creative individuals. Joey claimed that it took a lot of balls for him and Tripp to pursue their vision, as a lot of people weren't going to understand it. But he was confident that their music would stand the test of time, pointing out that the songs on the album were written between 1995 and 2002, yet they all gelled together as a whole. That's one of the things I like about this music, he said. 20 years from now, it will still be good, and it won't have dated at all. The band's sound, as revealed on their album Beyond the Valley of the Murder Dolls, was classic punk metal trash, a high-energy fusion of Alice Cooper, the Sex Pistols, Kiss and Rob Zombie, with ghoulish, cartoon, violent, tongue-in-cheek lyrics. Opening with a cheesy orchestral sample that is promptly ripped off and replaced with the distorted, amped-up riffing of Slip My Wrists, the album proceeds to pay tribute to the schlocky glam metal of the 1980s with Twist My Sister. The tone by now is firmly set for the rest of the record, from the stabbing, synth-driven horror movie homage of Dead in Hollywood to the specific Exorcist references of Love at First Fright. The likes of She Was a Teenage Zombie prove that Joey is as good a guitarist as he is a drummer, and who can resist the overdriven necrophiliac surf punk of grave-robbing USA, or the camp psychosis of Kill Miss America. Dressed to Depress could be an anthem for any teenage glam goth stuck in the middle of nowhere, while B-movie Scream Queen will surely set those same crazy, mixed-up hearts aflutter. Following the album's release, Murder Dolls also enjoyed a surprise hit with their turbocharged cover of Billy Idol's 80s rock anthem White Wedding. While Joey remains an integral full-time member of Slipknot, the success of Murder Dolls ensures that, like all the best horror movie creations, they'll be back.
So many things, man. It's touring, and it's being away from home, and it's the press, and it's, you know, everything that comes along with that you don't think about when you're ready to go on the road. You think, woo, here we go, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere with nothing to eat, and you're, you know, and management, they're all making promises, and, you know, and it's all lies, and it's really tough, man.
Corey Taylor and Joey Jordison weren't the only members of Slipknot to bring their side projects to fruition during Slipknot's 2-year layoff. Founder and percussionist Sean Cran had been talking about writing some songs with singer and guitarist Brandon Dana for a few years, and they took this opportunity to really get their collaboration off the ground. Adding lead guitarist Stephen Robinson, they originally christened their new band The Orange, but that was always subject to change. A true artist and visionary, Sean has always thought of music in terms of colours, and while one day's work may be orange, the next may be blue or green or whatever. Indeed, one of the standout tracks on their debut album was called Blue. The one constant, though, was that none of the songs sounded remotely like anything anyone would expect from Slipknot. So it was that Sean came up with the band name To My Surprise, anticipating the opening to many people's reviews or comments on the record. Sean himself described To My Surprise self-titled debut album as a mixture of folk, 70s rock fuzz and schizophrenic grooves. Others found it impossible to categorise, with comparisons ranging from Queens of the Stone Age to Fountains of Wayne via the Beatles, Alice in Chains, The Cure, The Doors, The Kinks and Soul Coughing. Pretty diverse then. Produced by Rick Rubin, who came on board after hearing a demo of the album opener The World's Too Small, the record hit the shops in October 2003. A mix of progressive power pop, punk, metal, psychedelia and melancholy, the LP employed acoustic guitar, country rock tempos and a generally sunny, upbeat melodic outlook that was the antithesis of Slipknot. Despite this, Sean insisted that he was still the clown. Unlike Corey, Jim and Joey, who were all happy to remove their masks and show their real faces for their side projects, Sean's face was deliberately obscured in all of To My Surprise's promotional photos and live shows. To My Surprise was simply another side to the clown's complex personality, and perhaps, unlike the others, Sean's Slipknot persona was not something he could remove as easily as his physical mask. It's ironic then that To My Surprise should be the Slipknot side project to sound the least like the main band. Ranging from the punk pop of Easy or Not to the epic gloom of Say Goodbye and Stephen Robinson's AC/DC guitar riffing on In the Mood, To My Surprise was as catchy as a flesh-eating virus according to the CMJ website. After the rhythmic acoustic opener The World's Too Small, hard rockers like Get It To Go and Cheap Trick influenced Blue alternate with slower songs like the gently melodic Sunday, Turn It Back Around and This Life. The album successfully mixed light and shade, sunshine and midnight, Detroit punk and bubblegum pop, with the core trio overdubbing vocal harmonies, layers of spectacular guitar and additional instruments to create a lush mini-symphony of sound. Dana's classic soulful rock vocals contrast nicely with Kralm's occasional nasal twang, sounding not unlike Pere Ubu's David Thomas, and the record concludes in grand style with the tripped-out space pop of Who's to Say. Unfortunately, To My Surprise failed to meet with the success it deserved. Its catchy pop hooks were far too mellow and melodic for the maggots, and unlike the Stone Sour or Murder Dolls records, To My Surprise seemed unable to cross over to a wider MTV audience, despite being arguably the most commercially viable of the three. It would be a shame if the project were dismissed as a failure, though one thing is certain. If the clown feels like a second To My Surprise record is something he wants to do, then he's not going to let a little thing like lack of sales or airplay hold him back.
Finally got the power to do a video in our hometown. We basically put the call out for as many maggots as possible, and like 400 showed up. We ended up taking over this house that was being renovated anyway. It's insane, dude. I mean, like, at one point there was like 200 people in this little living room. We were underneath in the basement. The floor was going I was like, oh, we're all gonna die.
Slipknot activity, meanwhile, continued despite the band's physical absence. 2002 saw a radio edit of Left Behind released as a single, with different vocals featuring less full-on screaming that was backed with live versions of Liberate and Surfacing and the Left Behind video. Later in the year, My Plague was lifted as a second single from Iowa, helped along by its inclusion on the Resident Evil soundtrack. This was backed by live versions of Sick and Heretic Anthem, and was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance, where it was up against, among others, Stone Sour's Little Melody. The band also released their first DVD in 2002, the 2-disc Disaster Pieces set. This comprised the full set of a concert from London, featuring some 15 songs, shot on film and digital video with over 30 different cameras, including minicams attached to band members' heads for real personal up-close and intimate footage. Documentary inserts of the band preparing for the show, the stage being set up, sound checks and autograph sessions were included between songs, and the second disc also included the videos for My Plague, Left Behind, Wait and Bleed and Spit It Out. Despite all this, however, there were rumours and concerns that Slipknot may never record or play together again. In April 2003, Corey Taylor told Belgian metal magazine Aardschok that Slipknot were the biggest, baddest joke ever told. Slipknot equals shit. Stone Sour equals honesty. He was just as forthright in other interviews, claiming that Stone Sour were where it was at for him these days, and that he truly didn't know if Slipknot would ever make another record. Later, he admitted that while he was having so much fun with Stone Sour, his memories of the Slipknot experience were tainted with negativity and bitterness. "We came very close to not making the third album," he told Kerrang. "The thought of going back and being with Slipknot made me sick to my stomach." Corey also claimed that while he got the stick for bad-mouthing the band to the press, he was only saying what every other Slipknot member was thinking. The Clown too had expressed his doubts, saying that while he hoped Slipknot would get back together, he honestly didn't know if it would happen. The crunch came when Kron called Taylor up to ask where he was at, and the pair of them suddenly realised that they'd allowed themselves to drift apart. Never mind the band, here was a deep friendship that had been allowed to fade to the point where they hadn't seen each other or kept in touch for months. They realised that it was time to rebuild the brotherhood again. Another wake-up call occurred in June 2003, when bassist Paul Gray was involved in a minor road accident. When the police arrived, they opened the trunk of his Porsche and found quantities of marijuana, cocaine and a number of syringes. He was arrested and eventually sentenced to a year's probation, but for a while it looked like his future in the band, if there was still a band, could be in doubt. Slipknot had always been fiercely anti-drugs, having seen at first hand the damage they can do, and regarding them contemptuously as an easy escape from the horrors of reality that they were dedicated to engaging with. The Clown had previously stated that any member caught using drugs would be kicked out of the band, as the last thing Slipknot wanted to do was to slip into that cliched rock and roll lifestyle. Yet by mid-2003, Gray wasn't the only band member battling addiction and drugs and alcohol issues. He was, however, the only one then facing a jail term. The bond of friendship, family and brotherhood overcame their reservations about his behaviour, and Slipknot closed ranks around the troubled bassist, rallying round him in his hour of need. With various members off around the country working on their side projects, no one in Slipknot realised the true extent of Paul's problem. Corey in particular felt guilty that in finding a way to cope with the pressures himself by reforming Stone Sour, he may have inadvertently contributed to Paul's pain, as the bassist felt that his band was breaking up around him. The positive upshot, however, was that not only Gray but other band members quit drinking or whatever else they were indulging in and concentrated their energies on getting Slipknot back together. By 2004, Gray was clean and healthy for the first time since 1998. The band cleaned out their house, got rid of the people around them who were trying to destroy the band from within, got all their issues out in the open and started hanging out as friends again. Soon they were stronger than ever. Slipknot were back.
Rick Rubin, because he told us at the beginning of this whole thing that you're a very extreme band, and that's good. But to have dead silence is very extreme also. So don't be afraid to bring those elements into this whole process. Don't be locked in that you have to make another Iowa. Corey's got a great voice. Let him sing. You know, let's put a triangle in there, because man, think about it, that's heavy, man. If you know, the silence is deadly type thing. So, you know, we were able to open up a lot more musical ability that we all have.
Late in 2003, Slipknot regrouped in a haunted house in Los Angeles to begin work on their third album. This time, regular producer Ross Robinson was replaced by Rick Rubin, best known for his work with the cult Slayer, the Beastie Boys, and most recently, Johnny Cash. It had been decided that fresh blood was needed and a new approach. Slipknot wanted to move on, to mess with people's heads, to come up with something that had the same power as before but in a completely different form. Kron, having worked with Rubin on his To My Surprise project, decided that he was the man for the job. The rest of the band looked at his track record and agreed. The haunted house, meanwhile, lived up to its reputation. Joey Jordison found his bedroom door opening of its own accord every morning at exactly 9 a.m, even when he tried to jam it closed. and one night woke up freezing with the air conditioning going full blast. The only trouble was, there was no air conditioning. For his part, Paul Gray refused to go into a certain area of the basement, and all the band members agreed that something of the eerie atmosphere of the place transferred itself onto the recording. "We have that fire again that we had when we started in 1995, Jordison told Kerrang! Magazine, adding that if they hadn't all taken a break, they wouldn't have been able to make the album they did. They wanted to expand on everything that they'd touched on with their previous albums, and to make something both special and original. The result is a collection of some of the heaviest songs Slipknot have ever recorded, alongside some of the most experimental. It also contains some of the most melodic and, dare we say it, commercial moments the band have yet committed to disc, such as Duality and Pulse of Maggots, made available as a free pre-release download on the band's website. It's got the feel of Ministry crossed with Slayer, Joey said of the latter, which certainly sounded more like old-school metal than Slipknot's patented speed thrash. Duality, meanwhile, is the most experimental single the band has ever released, with a corrosive, disciplined groove welded to an anthemic chorus, and Corey's vocals fed through all kinds of effects. On both tracks, as throughout the album, Jim Root and Mick Thompson are really allowed to break loose as guitarists, showing off their virtuosity in a way that was never deemed appropriate before. "Forget everything you know," claimed the website. Slipknot were out of the box, and their new album wasn't going to conform to anyone's preconceptions.
Some people were pissed off. Some people kind of wanted to break up. Some people, didn't know what to do. Some people fucking were sitting at home not talking to each other. It was a weird situation, because of other people. Just, what we did is we used to be where it was 9 of us and we're like this, and we let other people get in there and kind of start picking at it and start pulling people apart. And basically what we did was we threw everybody out and we came back to us being 9 again.
The new album, released in May 2004, was titled Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. The band claimed that it emphasised the record's themes of bonding and unification, stressing that they didn't necessarily look on it as negative or evil-sounding. There are so many internal thoughts and so much intensity within the lyrics that there are a lot of different meanings that can be pulled out of it, Joey told MTV.com. A lot of feelings went into the making of this record, and after digesting the whole thing, you can really see that we were dealing a lot with getting back together and learning how to be a band again. Just as they had done for Iowa, the band adopted new masks and boiler suits to promote the subliminal verses. Sid Wilson ditched his gas mask for a kind of mechanical skull, while Paul Gray's pig mask mutated into a darker and more futuristic or robotic version, though still with a truncated snout. The others just seem to have produced slicker versions of their original designs, although both Corey's scarecrow and Sean's clown appear to have suffered some horrendous injuries since we last saw them. Corey's mask is now a mass of ugly scars, brutally stapled closed over a twisted grin and flattened nose, while the clown leers out through a mess of bloody bandages. Behind the masks, however, the new Slipknot seemed more relaxed and human than ever before. Previously, the band's spokesman, the Clown, declared that he would be abstaining from promotional interviews this time around in order to give the other members a chance to speak. Gone too were the hyperbolic declarations of world domination or destruction. In their place was a quiet confidence, a determination to see things through and to make the best music they possibly could. Perhaps Slipknot had finally found a new kind of maturity, cutting down on their self-destructive personal behaviour and finding happiness in deeper ways. On the 11th of March, for instance, Corey Taylor married his long-term fiancée Scarlett in a small ceremony in Des Moines. Slipknot in 2004 were happy, passionate, excited and intensely committed to the music they were making, music that remained as dark and powerful as ever. Their live show, meanwhile, had been stripped right back to basics, with the theatrical effects, spinning drum kits and pyrotechnics replaced by tight, hard, impossibly dynamic extreme rock. Those who saw the opening dates of their near-year-long world tour said that they were the best rock shows that they'd ever seen. Slipknot had come to a crucial stage in their journey. They'd risen, fallen, and then risen again. After all the side projects and spin-off bands, when the 9 members came back together again and put on their masks, they felt like they'd come home. There was now no need for boasts, bullshit, or special effects. Slipknot knew that their true power was self-evident and came from within. Now it was time to show the world what they were truly capable of.
Thank you for buying more Maximum Slipknot. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy it or have any comments or suggestions, write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT36YY, or email on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye for now.